Are you all teachers here? Because I didn't ask who you are. Because with 15 minutes, I mean 15 minutes, it means that 5 minutes is gone just. So who is elementary teacher? Okay. High school, secondary, upper. Okay. After just. And so you are all teachers in one way. No? Who is not a teacher apart from you? Okay. And
Former.
Yeah, well, yes, but you are a teacher. You are a teacher. And what do you do? It's not that I want to know your life.
I work in the Academy of Sciences.
Okay.
And just connected with educational sciences.
Okay, educational sciences. Okay, so what's your relationship with technology? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it uncertain? Do you feel not confident about technology?
Love and hate relationship.
Love and hatred, which is good because it means that you're not so sure if technology is good or bad. Which is okay. So just this is going to be quicker, I promise. So again, the outline, how to conceptualize uncertainty of attack. I will go back to the slide of uncertainty. I will actually tell you about the course intervention that we designed. You might relate to it a little bit better perhaps than the previous one, and then some talking points. Okay, so in this case, when it comes to how to conceptualize uncertainty in attack, there are two questions. Before it was what is uncertainty and whose uncertainty. In this case, it's what uncertainty, which is the same, and I'm going to provide exactly the same answer as before. But in this case, it's important to ask this question: why uncertainty of technology use? Now, here again, let's imagine that this is like a training course or just a conversation, you know, and I don't have her that tells me it's time to quit. But I appreciate that you nod once in a while. It's actually very, very good, especially after all this online Zoom and stuff. You know, finally we can. I'm actually a little bit, yeah, I feel a little bit stoned now. I can look into your eyes. I feel like I'm intruding. Okay, so why? Because this is something that, again, when we started, the problem was in the literature, scientific literature, when we talk about uncertainty of technology use, is the teacher that doesn't know if the projector will work. Okay, how to plug this or unplug that. Whether the PowerPoint will display correctly, okay? And all the work was done in order to support what? The teacher's confidence. So once again, we go back to Evakinus, okay? So the main point was that. But now that we know that one way to look at uncertainty is also this, so that uncertainty is dealing with being in is referring to a situation that is open, then you can actually start seeing why this might be an issue with educational technology, which is a synonym of technology used in education. Okay, so it's about how to use digital technologies in education. To cut the long story short, and this time you see that you will see that I will stop. Okay? The biggest problem with educational technology is not just that teachers, as often is said, are afraid, are not confident of using technology. But the problem is that technology potentially helps us, potentially, reorganize, redesign, rethink, reimagine teaching and learning activities. Now, when we started this, it was end of 2019. After that, the world, slightly changed. And actually, we got this confirmation that technology, as you said, you can love it and hate it at the same time. And the reason is that technology can be helpful, but technology also challenges us. And not just because we don't know what button to push, but it's also because there are so many. I mean, if we take it seriously, there are so many ways in which we can use all these tools. Now, interestingly enough, what I said before about this email, traditionally, there is the presentation and then the Q&A, But we have technology. I mean, I see that some of you was actually using, Natalia, you have the smartphone, okay? Now, Natalia can just, tweet a comment on this, say, what is this saying? Just to make a stupid example, okay? So, and this is an option. This is an option. This is an option. So, for example, I'm speaking in English. You're listening. You might be a little bit, shy, and then you don't want to ask a question, okay? But if I tell you, listen, think over what I said. If you're interested, then send me an email. In this case, we're using technology for doing what? For establishing an impactful relation, okay? It's not just me answering to your questions on the spot now, but it's more about, finding alternatives. And that's why, essentially, and this was a long story, to answer the question why we should talk about uncertainty of technology use. Now, you are not a big crowd of educational technologists, so you want to understand this, and I'm not able to explain it in 3 minutes, but one thing that is actually very important is that if we want to use technology to transform, to change education in something better, of course not something worse, then we have to look at what is called transformative educational technology, in which one big issue is exactly what I was trying to explain before, which is how we can potentially reorganize, which is a word to say change, transform, rethink, also reimagine, but also concretely, not just the clouds. The reorganization of teaching and learning activities, which is what we do with the students as teachers, in the light of the available tools. So now, this was a typical example. We're running late because I speak too much. So why don't we use technology? Why don't we reorganize a talk, which usually has 15 minutes presentation and then Q&A, in something that is slightly different. Me speaking for 40 minutes, but apart from the joke, this is a way in which we can, a very simple example, in which we can reorganize an activity, which is a very traditional one, which is a conference presentation. If I'm still trying to tell you why we need to talk about uncertainty of technology use. If this is the case, if we want to reorganize, if we want to engage technology in this more transformative way, and the alternatives are all here, but I don't talk about them, then we need to face the uncertainties of teachers. Why? Because actually, I'm not actually sure that by adding my email, something will happen. Maybe you're not used to this type of thing, and you will never contact me. So actually, I spoke for 40 minutes, and I actually didn't give you the chance to say something. Now, I'm not so sure about this. You see, I'm not sure. And the reason is that there's no straightforward answer. It's not that this is going to work or the traditional format is going to work. And why? Because we're trying to transform, we're trying to reorganize an activity. Now, in teaching and learning, I'm sure that after COVID, we know, we have an experience, let me put it this way, we all have this experience, to know that it's not so easy actually, the moment in which we cannot meet with the students in a classroom. What are we going to do? Now, there are two alternatives. We try to reproduce the same model. So, Zoom or whatever replaces this. I don't know if this works. I'm not so sure if this is going to work. Or we try to reorganize it. But the reorganization is not given. We immediately face uncertainty. This is to explain the reason why we have to talk about this issue. And I hope that after COVID, education will try to take the chance to reorganize. Okay, but I don't need to. So articulation. So the intervention was essentially the intervention that we designed, that was still as part of this project, was specifically for teachers, adult learners, formerly adult learners, but teachers, lecturers, also coaches, or educational practitioners in general, to help them face the uncertainty of technology use in education. And now I describe very briefly how the intervention, which was basically a training course, which was organized like a training course, how the intervention looked like. So imagine that you could attend it yourself. Not that I want you to do this, but you could do it. So first of all, this was because of COVID, because we ran all this during COVID, everything was online. Okay. The intervention was not 10 days as the one with the high school students, but it was actually spanned across 6 weeks. So it was, 8 weeks. It was actually a long period. Because the thing is that just to have a couple of meetings, we thought was not particularly conducive to any result. So it was actually a long training, long course. At the beginning of the course, and this was actually at the beginning of the course, we informed the participants that by the end of the course, they had this sort of task. They had to think how to reorganize their own teaching practice, because they were all either teachers or lecturers. We actually had two pilots with lectures, university lectures. So they had to think, okay, how can I reorganize my teaching and learning activities? During the training, because the reorganization implied the use of technology, during the training we actually introduced a number of educational technologies. Okay? In most of in our pilots there were actually 4 educational tools. What is an educational tool? For example, educational video is an educational tool. Webinar is an educational tool. Hyper video is an educational tool. Collaborative video annotation is another tool. It doesn't matter if you know it, but just to say that it's a tool that you can use in your teaching. And then, so every block we will introduce a tool, and in each and every block we have this structure. We prepare the video introducing the educational tool, that could be educational video, webinar, whatever. Then we would ask the teachers to play with the tool, literally to play with the tool. So if it's an educational video, we ask them, make a video and try to use it in your own practice. And we ask them to do one thing, which goes back again to the difference between Ebakindus and the määramatuse. We ask them to write down what in English we would translate as insecurities, things that they were not sure of, but also opportunities. So insecurities is, I'm not so sure that I should use videos. I'm not so sure how long the videos could be. I'm not so sure if students will watch the video. I'm not so sure if I have to add something to the video, for example. These were actually things that they said. But also opportunities. Opportunities are the other side of the coin. On one side you have things you're not sure of. On the other side you have opportunities. So what would you do? So for example, they told us, well, I could use short videos to introduce a unit, for example. This type of thing. So opportunities. Opportunities are not necessarily things that they are doing already. Opportunities is more, what would I do? And then there will be a webinar, because as I said, the course was online, in which we came together and we discussed our insecurities and opportunities for each of the educational tools we introduced. In the end, we actually conducted interviews in pair, so like you and you together, in which we actually had a conversation about the course, about how any possible change during any change during the intervention. And it was also for them the chance to tell us about how they would like to reorganize their learning and teaching. So this was basically the intervention, which we are going to offer as a training course. This was actually said by Marcus. So the main ingredients, these were sort of conclusions, actually, not in brief. But the main conclusions or talking points that you can keep in mind. First of all, there is this issue. We actually saw that one big thing in technology is not just that I cannot use this, but it's really about how to use it meaningfully in your own teaching practice. This is the first thing. If there is a commitment to change, then there will be uncertainties related to how one reorganizes your own practice. Then, I think that I skip to articulation of what one is not sure of, as well as opportunities. This was actually something that initially was quite a big deal, because with technology, we tend to say pros and cons. Okay? So things that are helpful and things that are not helpful. And we struggled a little bit with the participants to get this point across. We're not just asking pros and cons, what the technology could be for or not. But it was mostly about what you're not sure of. So if I give you a hypervideo, try it out. How would you use it and what you're not sure of? And the articulation of these two elements, what we call insecurities and opportunities, was actually very important for them, also to overcome these evacuums that we were talking about before, okay? So they know that technology is not for me. Because the thing is that accepting that there's absolutely nothing wrong with the fact that you actually don't know on the spot how to use it, because that's exactly the point. There is a variety of options, and once you become aware of the variety of options, you don't blame yourself. Then another important thing that I will mention, and then I'm done, so we actually recuperate a bit, is the community-based approach. This is actually something that is not very surprising, but it's actually very important to point out. If you are talking about what you're not sure of, but also how you imagine teaching activities, if you have other people helping you, not helping you, discussing with you, well, this is a big plus. First of all, because you realize that your insecurities are also others' insecurities. But also with opportunities, it's actually very interesting, because if I give you a tool, you will tell me something, I will tell you something, and we can then see, that we can use it in many different ways. So we actually give ideas to each other to try out. So that's why I said that it was community-based. So this was it, basically. I think that I don't have anything else. Well, this is basically. No, yeah, one big issue, sorry. Because I actually missed the two slides. One big issue that we actually had, because usually when we report about projects, we always have to say that everything was perfect. It wasn't, of course, perfect. There was one big issue, one training that I actually did with university lecturers. After the second meeting, we lost half of them. We lost not half of them. There were 15, we lost 5. And the reason was, they said, I expected to be told how to use technology, which was exactly the opposite of what we were trying to do. So the big issue is that, once again, that you may have the expectation that once you have the tool, there is somebody who's going to tell you how to use it. It goes without saying that, first of all these tools are not meant for education. They're not designed specifically for education. We have to see how we can use it. There is a variety of options. And as trainer, it's almost impossible to cover all possibilities. Okay? So, but anyway, this was just to say that unfortunately, there is this idea that with technology, the other issue is that these were university lectures, and university lectures tend to be more opinionated than lectures who are already opinionated. So it's really a big thing. But this was actually a very interesting thing to see. That the problem is when people want to have the answer. When actually there are thousands of answers. So giving just one answer to me is one of the pointless. So I'm done. Thank you very much. I just spoke, but you can just write to me and write to me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Suur aitäh!